She walked into her own bank in plain clothes and was denied a simple withdrawal. The manager laughed in her face. Minutes later, she fired him in front of the entire branch. She didn't arrive in a company car. She wasn't wearing a power suit, didn't have an assistant, no tablet, no loud voice announcing her name at the front desk. Just a woman, about 47, in a dark green blouse and khaki pants, holding keys in one hand and a simple leather wallet in the other. Vanessa Harper looked like any other customer when she stepped into the Liberty National branch on Main Street in Boise, Idaho. And that was the point. She came alone, unannounced, because sometimes you learn the most about a place when no one knows who you are. The branch lobby was quiet, fluorescent lights humming overhead. A few customers sat in cushioned chairs by the windows, scrolling phones or filling out deposit slips. Vanessa waited patiently behind a man in a bright orange shirt with a landscaping logo who was casually chatting with one of the tellers. When her turn came, she approached the counter with a polite smile. "Good morning," she said. "I'd like to withdraw funds from my personal account." The teller, a young woman named Emily, nodded. "Of course. I'll need to see your ID and account number." Vanessa handed over both, but before Emily could proceed, the manager, Michael Reynolds, wire-rimmed glasses, navy tie, forced smile, stepped out of his glass-walled office. He glanced at Vanessa, then at the ID, then back at her. "Excuse me," Michael interrupted. "We can't process this withdrawal today." Vanessa blinked, confused. "I don't understand. Is there an issue with my account?" Michael gave a subtle smirk. "Let's just say we've had incidents, people pretending to be someone they're not, large withdrawals. You know how it is." Vanessa stared at him for a moment, unsure if this was some kind of test. "My account is fine," she said. "I can provide additional verification if needed." He didn't ask for it. Instead, Michael leaned against the counter with a practiced grin. "We've had fraud attempts before, no offense, but we don't just take people's word for it. And this ID, it doesn't quite look like you." Vanessa tilted her head, trying to stay composed. "That's me. I'm Vanessa Harper, CEO of this bank." The man behind her shifted in line. Emily's eyes darted up from her terminal. Michael snorted, dismissing the claim entirely. "Ma'am, let's not waste each other's time," he said, waving a hand. "You need to come back with proper verification, or better yet, make an appointment." Vanessa locked eyes with him. "Michael," she said. He nodded curtly. "Did you actually check the account in the system before you came out here?" Michael crossed his arms. "It's procedure. I don't need to look at every ID to know when something feels off." That was the moment. Not when he denied the withdrawal, not even when he questioned her identity. It was when he said "feels off," as if her very presence was suspicious. Vanessa's face stayed neutral, but inside, something tightened. She'd led this company through 3 mergers, survived a hostile board vote, and turned Liberty National into one of the most respected regional banks in the Northwest. Yet here she was, treated like a criminal in her own institution by a man who hadn't bothered to check anything. Still, she kept her voice even. "Michael, I suggest you check the account now, just to be sure." Instead of doing so, Michael half turned to Emily, who'd grown noticeably quiet. "Can you handle this? I've got calls to make," he said, already walking away. But before he could disappear into his office, Vanessa pulled her phone from her purse. Not to yell, not to make a scene, just one call. And what happened after that call would change the entire atmosphere of that branch. Michael's door clicked shut behind him, but the air in the lobby didn't settle. Emily fidgeted uncomfortably behind the glass, her eyes flicking between her monitor and Vanessa. The other customers pretended not to listen, but every ear was tuned in. Vanessa paused for a moment, then stepped back from the counter, phone still in hand. She hadn't made the call yet. Emily, she said quietly, you see the name on that ID? Emily hesitated, glanced down, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. Vanessa Harper. Vanessa gave a small smile. And when you pull up that name in the account system, what do you see? Emily's fingers tapped the keyboard tentatively. A few seconds passed, and her eyes widened slightly. I see an executive account. Vanessa Harper, CEO. She cut herself off, glancing quickly toward Michael's office. You didn't know I was coming, Vanessa said. I didn't want anyone to know. But now that you see my information checks out, is there anything else you need before... Before Emily could respond, the office door swung open again. Michael was back, clutching a tablet, clearly not wanting an issue to fester. His gaze snapped between them. Vanessa didn't raise her voice. Emily pulled up the account. It confirms who I am. You can process the withdrawal. Michael let out an exaggerated sigh. Look, lady, Miss Harper, he started. Emily cut in, almost involuntarily. Michael, I just checked her account. It shows she's the CEO. Michael's face twitched, then hardened. Oh, so now we just take a customer's word and let them play dress-up. He spun toward Vanessa. You come in here, no assistant, no heads-up, dressed like you're running errands, and we're all supposed to believe you're someone important. The silence was deafening. Ballpoint pens stopped scratching. Even the man in the landscaping shirt put his phone away. Vanessa looked at him for a long moment, the way she might study a quarterly report that didn't add up. I didn't realize my wardrobe required approval to access my own funds, she said. Michael's jaw ticked. It's not about your clothes. It's about protocol. You didn't follow protocol. Protocol, Vanessa said, is you refusing to verify my identity before making an assumption. You spoke to me with sarcasm, dismissed a valid ID, and now you're trying to tell me how to do my job. Michael scoffed. Are you seriously? No, she said. I'm trying to understand if you're capable of doing yours. He laughed, turning to the other staff, throwing up his hands. Can someone get this woman out of here before she makes a scene? Emily flinched. Another teller, a man in his 30s named Jason, stood from his desk but didn't move. He just looked at Vanessa, studying her face, really seeing her now. Hang on a second, Jason muttered. Vanessa Harper. I've seen her before. She gave a talk at a conference in Seattle last spring about ethical banking. That's her. Michael didn't react right away. He blinked slowly, like his brain was catching up. Vanessa stepped forward, calm, collected, not raising her voice, but her words carried weight. I gave that talk because I believe people in positions like yours shape how customers see our institution. You've made it very clear how you see me. He opened his mouth again, but Vanessa raised a hand. This conversation is over. You had a chance to handle this with dignity. You chose something else. She turned, finally pressing the call button on her phone. It rang twice. Lorna, hi. I need you to connect me to HR right now. Yes, this location. Then she ended the call. Michael stared at her, unsure whether to scoff or laugh. But the energy in the room had shifted. He wasn't in control anymore. The staff could feel it. The customers could feel it. But Michael didn't realize how fast things were about to spiral. Vanessa didn't move from the teller window. She stood there, phone in hand, eyes fixed on the entrance to Michael's office. No shouting, no threats. Just a silence that wrapped the room and made everyone sit up straighter. She could have walked away. She had every reason to. But this wasn't about flexing power. That wasn't her way. In her mind, she was back to her first branch visit as a newly appointed regional director, still climbing the ranks at Liberty National. She'd walked into a location in Spokane, and the manager had politely asked if she was, at the very least, lost. She'd laughed it off then. A young black woman in a sharp suit, freshly promoted. She was used to raised eyebrows. But now she wasn't laughing. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. She answered, "Yes, I'm here. No, he doesn't know yet. I'll wait." Michael had gone back to his office, but this time he didn't close the door. He was still watching her, arms crossed, smug, still clinging to the belief she was bluffing. Jason whispered something to Emily, who nodded slowly. An older customer, a woman with a checkbook and a cane, leaned toward Vanessa. "Honey, you okay?" "That man was out of line," she said. Vanessa smiled gently at her. "Thank you. I'll handle it." The phone clicked. "Kendra, it's Sheila, HR. I've got the regional VP patched in." "Okay, I'm at the Main Street branch in Boise. I was just denied service for a withdrawal. The branch manager questioned my identity, ignored verification, and dismissed me in front of customers." Silence on the line. Then Sheila said, "Does he know who you are?" "I told him twice." The voice on the other end shifted, calm to icy. "We'll handle it. Give us 3 minutes." Vanessa hung up, took a deep breath, and finally turned to face the room. Emily, hands trembling slightly, cleared her throat. "Miss Harper, do you still want to process the withdrawal?" Vanessa looked at her, young, nervous, maybe just past 20, probably just trying to survive the day. "No," she said softly. "Thank you, though. You handled it as best you could. You trusted your system. That's what you were trained to do. What matters is how you respond when something doesn't make sense. You responded with curiosity. He responded with control." A moment passed. Michael reappeared, walking slower this time, the same tablet still tucked under his arm. "Still waiting for the cavalry?" Vanessa met his eyes, unflinching. "They're already on their way." He smirked, just once. "You know, if you really are who you say you are, there are better ways to handle things. You could have called ahead, brought proof. Instead, you show up here like you're setting me up." "Is that what this is?" she said. "I didn't need to set anything up. You did that yourself." Michael frowned, unsure if that was an insult. Then the branch phone rang. Everyone heard it. Jason answered. "Liberty National, Main Street branch. Yes, one moment." He looked at Michael. "It's for you." Michael took the receiver slowly, like it might bite. "Hello, yes, this is Michael Reynolds." His eyes flicked to Vanessa. Yes, she's still here." He froze, then nodded, realization dawning. He hung up and walked back to the center of the lobby, looking around like he'd just noticed the entire room was watching. "Miss Harper," he said, voice slightly shaky now. "Can I speak with you privately for a minute?" "You had your moment," she replied, but Michael was about to learn that the apologies he never planned to give were already too late. For the first time since she walked in, Vanessa didn't need to say a word. Michael stood there, visibly trying to regroup, his fingers pressed against the tablet like it could steady him. But whatever confidence he'd walked in with was thinning fast. "Look," he started, "maybe things got a little heated. It's been a tense morning and—" "Stop," Vanessa said, her voice sharp enough to cut him off mid-sentence. The branch fell silent. Emily pretended to focus on her computer. Jason didn't even bother pretending. The customers froze. All eyes were on the woman in the green blouse who hadn't raised her voice once but now commanded the entire room with 5 letters. "I don't need a speech," she added. "I want accountability." Michael flinched, like the word had struck him. "Are you seriously trying to blame me for following security protocol?" "No," she said. "I'm holding you accountable for not following protocol. You refused to check my ID. You ignored system verification. You made it personal." He opened his mouth again, but she didn't stop. "You didn't pause to think. You didn't ask a single question. You decided who I was based on how I look, how I speak, what I wear. And that's not just lazy, it's dangerous. You work in finance, Michael. You can't lead with assumptions. At that moment, the front doors swung open. Two people walked in, both in sharp navy suits. One was Sheila from HR. The other, tall, with angular glasses and a neat haircut, was Gregory Tate, the regional vice president of the bank. They made a beeline for Vanessa, bypassing everyone else. "Vanessa," Gregory said, nodding in quiet acknowledgement. "We got here as fast as we could." "This is it," she replied, her tone still calm but razor-edged. Gregory turned to Michael. "Let's step into your office." Michael froze. "Wait, I didn't even know she was coming." "She gave no warning." Gregory didn't blink. "That's not the issue." Michael looked to Sheila, searching for backup, but she was already shaking her head. "We reviewed the branch's live feed footage," she said. "There's audio, there's video. It's very clear." "I was doing my job," Michael said, his voice rising now. You're not being fired because she's the CEO," Sheila cut in. "You're being fired because you ignored protocol, showed blatant disrespect, and created an unsafe environment for a client and your staff." He stood there, stunned. Vanessa finally stepped forward. "I could have fired you the second I walked back in," she said, "but I wanted you to hear why this matters." She gestured around the room. "You see all these people? They didn't know who I was. They watched this unfold, watched how you treated someone you didn't think mattered." She paused. "That's a stain on a reputation that doesn't just wash out. It follows us, and I won't let that stain spread." Michael's shoulders slumped. He looked smaller now, suddenly unsure where to stand or what to say. Sheila motioned him toward the office. He didn't argue. When the door clicked shut behind them, a strange silence settled. Awkward, heavy, like the oxygen level in the room had changed. Vanessa turned to the remaining staff. "I'll address the team in 5 minutes," she said quietly. "Please finish with the customers." Then she walked to the far end of the branch and sat in a chair, alone, for the first time since she'd crossed the threshold. But the moment wasn't about reflection. There was still one more truth the staff needed to hear. 5 minutes felt like 30. No one spoke much. Customers whispered, some slipped out, others lingered, curious. The staff kept their eyes down, but their ears were sharp. Something had shifted, and everyone felt it. When Vanessa stood and walked to the center of the lobby, it wasn't as the woman who'd asked for a withdrawal earlier. It was as the leader everyone now recognized. "Can I speak with the staff, please?" she asked, her tone softer now. Emily, Jason, and 2 other tellers stepped out from their windows and gathered around. The assistant branch manager, a man named Brian, who'd been silent during the ordeal, came forward too. "I know this morning was unexpected," Vanessa began, "but I want to explain something important. Not just about what happened, but why it can't happen again." They stood silently, listening. "I've been with this bank for 25 years. Started as an intern, pushed papers, watched managers walk by without a glance. I learned early that some people only show respect when they think you've earned it, and others won't show it if you don't look a certain way." She glanced at Emily, who looked like she might cry. Jason stood a little straighter. "When I walked in today," she continued, "I didn't want to be treated like a CEO. I just wanted to see how the branch operates, how people are spoken to, if our mission of integrity actually lives within these walls." Her voice didn't waver, but it carried weight. "Instead, I saw a manager make a decision based on an assumption. No questions, no verification, just judgment." Brian cleared his throat. "Miss Harper, if I may, some of us knew something was off, but we weren't sure how to step in without crossing a line." "I understand," Vanessa said, "and that's why I'm here. It's not just about Michael. It's about how we respond when we see something going wrong, not just for customers, but for each other. That hesitation, that I don't want to cross a line instinct, that's what stops change. It starts with silence, and then Jason finally spoke. I've been here a year, but I've seen managers brush people off. I didn't want to be that guy, but today I froze. I saw what he was doing to you, and I didn't say anything. Vanessa nodded. You're saying something now. Emily added quietly, I knew something was wrong too. I just didn't know if backing you up would get me in trouble. It won't, Vanessa assured her. When someone's being mistreated, especially in this office, it's never a mistake to speak up. One of the other tellers, an older man named Harold, looked over his glasses, honest. Truth is, we've all seen Michael act like that before, just not to someone with power. That's the point, Vanessa said. And if he talks to a CEO like that, how do you think he treats customers when no one's watching? No one needed to answer. They already knew. She looked around the group. Real people, real faces, real voices, the heartbeat of the company. Not its branding or buildings or ads, but these people. Moving forward, she said, there will be formal training on customer interaction and internal respect. I'll be at the first one myself, because if we can't hold each other accountable here, she tapped her heel on the floor, we've got nothing to say about trust. A slow ripple of agreement passed through. Heads nodded, shoulders relaxed. She finished with one final thought. It's not about who you think someone is. It's about treating every person with the same respect you'd give if you knew they were calling the shots. But Vanessa wasn't done, because there was still one final lesson the entire company needed to hear. The staff meeting ended quietly, with a few handshakes, a couple of lingering questions, and several long, thoughtful looks. No one left early. No one cracked jokes on their way back to their desks. Vanessa didn't leave right away. She stepped into the small break room, sat at a round table by the vending machine, and pulled out her phone, not to check messages, but to stare at the screen, thinking, processing, absorbing the weight of what had just unfolded. It wasn't about pride, not today. It was about what could have happened if she hadn't walked in that morning dressed like any other customer, if she'd sent an assistant, if she'd worn her CEO badge, or walked in flanked by executives. None of this would have happened. Michael would have smiled, offered her coffee, bent over backward to help, and nothing would have changed. She knew that truth deeply. She remembered a letter they'd received months ago. A woman in Missoula had written a complaint, said a manager had dismissed her, talked over her, and refused to cash a check she was trying to deposit for her elderly father. The case was marked resolved. Internal review said the manager followed protocol, but something about the tone of that letter had stuck with her forever. As the client wrote, it wasn't what he said. It was how quickly he decided I didn't belong. Back then, Vanessa couldn't prove intent. Today, she didn't have to. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. It was Gregory, the regional VP. He stepped in and closed the door. You okay? He asked. Yeah, she said. Just thinking. He sat across from her. I've worked with you a long time, Vanessa. I've never seen you fire someone like that. On the floor, in front of clients, staff. I didn't plan to, she replied. Then why today? She leaned back in her chair, voice steady. Because I needed them to see what accountability looks like in real time. No memos, no quiet transfers, just the truth. Gregory nodded slowly. Some folks upstairs might say you made it personal. She looked at him, unflinching. It was personal, and if they don't understand why, that's part of the same problem. He didn't argue. Instead, he asked something she didn't expect. Do you think he'd have treated me the same way? Vanessa didn't blink. You're in a suit, Gregory. You're 6'2" and wear a VP badge. he'd have rolled out the red carpet. He nodded again, quietly, this time. They sat in silence for a moment. "Do you think the staff got the message?" he finally asked. Vanessa thought of Jason, of Emily, even of Brian, who'd looked genuinely shaken after it all. "They did," she said, "but more importantly, they felt it, and that sticks longer than a message." He stood to leave, then paused. "You want me to handle the messaging to the other branches?" Vanessa stood too, gathering her things. "No, I'll do it myself." "You're going to visit them?" "Not right away, but eventually." She gave a faint smile. "Might leave the suit at home again." Gregory grinned. "Remind me not to be rude to anyone new walking in." She chuckled softly. "You're safe." When he left, Vanessa took one last look around the break room. Stale coffee pot, half-filled bulletin board, the sound of quiet voices beyond the door. This wasn't just a place where money moved. It was a reflection of who they were when no one was watching. But before she could leave for the day, she had one last thing to say to everyone. Before leaving the branch, Vanessa requested a quick announcement over the internal intercom. Nothing formal, just a few words to close out the day. No one in that building would forget. "Hello, this is Vanessa Harper. Thank you to the entire team for your patience and professionalism this morning. I'll be leaving shortly, but I wanted to say one more thing. Meet me in the lobby if you've got a minute." It didn't take long. The staff gathered again, some leaning on desks, others standing in the back. Even the security guard stepped in from outside. It was casual, but every eye was on her. Vanessa stood in front of them, hands loosely clasped. No papers, no script. Today could be a bad dream you tell your spouse about when you get home, or something you try to forget entirely. But it won't be, because today mattered. A few people shifted their weight, listening. "I walked in this morning not looking like someone you're used to seeing in a company video. And I did that because I needed to know what really happens here when no one's performing, when people think they're just dealing with a customer. I got the truth, unfiltered." She let that sink in for a second. But the truth goes beyond one manager's mistake. The real truth is in how all of you responded. Some of you froze, some of you hesitated, and that's human. But now you've seen what silence allows, and I hope you'll also see that if you can stand up. She scanned the room. Emily stood next to Jason again. Harold looked at his shoes. Brian, the assistant manager, stood with his hands behind his back, face unreadable. We talk a lot about leadership. Most of the time it sounds like meetings and metrics. But real leadership, real, looks like holding the door for a customer who's had a terrible day. It looks like speaking up when a colleague steps out of line. It looks like refusing to be a bystander. Her voice softened. Sometimes leadership means doing the hard thing in front of everyone, not because it's convenient, but because people are watching, and you can either teach them fear or teach them courage. She took a breath. Michael won't be returning. That decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary, because a moment like today, if left alone, becomes the norm, and the norm becomes policy. Then she smiled. Not the polished CEO smile from press photos, but something warmer, more worn, something that said she'd been where they were, that she was them. "I'll be visiting other branches in the coming months. Not to check up on anyone, but to listen. And yes, sometimes I'll be dressed like I was today." A light chuckle rippled through the group. And if any of you ever find yourself in a situation where you're not sure, ask yourself, would I treat this person the same if I knew they could walk into a boardroom tomorrow and make a decision about my job? If the answer's no, then it's the wrong way to treat them, period. A quiet agreement filled the space. She paused, looked around one last time, then added softly, "Thank you for hearing me out. And thank you for staying open to learning. Because that's how we grow, not just as a bank, but as people. With that, she picked up her purse, nodded, and walked out the door. No fanfare, no security, just a woman who'd reminded everyone what respect looks like when the suits are off and the truth is laid bare. Because leadership isn't about who's watching you. It's about how you act when you think no one is. If this story means something to you, subscribe to our channel for more real-world stories that challenge our assumptions, what we accept, and what we think leadership should look like.